In normal times, this plaza would be packed with people ahead of the Passover holiday next week. But like many other sites in Jerusalem, including the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound and the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, this place is largely closed during the ongoing war.
Iran fires missiles across the Middle East while being pummeled by the U.S. and Israel.
What is that? Is that
So foggy tonight.
What if all of the current occurrences in Jerusalem are far more than a collection of isolated incidents? Lately, the city has felt like a grand stage for events that defy simple explanation, suggesting a deeper narrative unfolding beneath the surface. There have been reports of debris falling dangerously close to hallowed ground, while the paths to the most sacred sites have become increasingly difficult to navigate. Dark birds flood the sky in formations that look almost calculated, while the dry, parched terrain is suddenly struck by heavy, jagged hail that seems to fall out of nowhere. And the western wall is frequently shrouded in a thick, unnatural fog that clings to the ancient stones. Even the ground itself has started to move as if the earth is restless and breathing with a heavy, ancient rhythm. It is possible to explain each of these moments individually, but when you take them as a whole, they feel distinct and heavy with a meaning we can't quite name. Therefore, the question is whether these are merely coincidences or part of a larger pattern that people are finally starting to notice. According to recent accounts, a piece of what appeared to be an intercepted rocket fell inside the heart of Jerusalem. And while there wasn't much physical harm from the impact, the scale of the debris didn't matter as much as the location itself. The rubble fell close to places of worship like the Temple Mount and the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which for millions of individuals are not just landmarks, but the very center of their identity and history. Preliminary evaluations suggest this was the result of an aerial interception system reacting to airborne activities. Yet when something happens near sites of such immense significance, the event itself becomes secondary to the psychological and spiritual tension it creates. This is where contemplation starts, because Jerusalem has never been just a city, but a place where spiritual weight coexists with global pressure. When even a minor incident takes place in such a setting, it inevitably prompts inquiries about what it might symbolize in the grander scheme of human history. Throughout various historical accounts and ancient wisdom, there have been descriptions of periods defined by total unpredictability and a sense of collective sorrow among nations, where events take place in ways that garner global attention. While these descriptions don't always pinpoint a specific calendar date, they draw attention to a recurring trend where certain occurrences appear to have a gravity that others do not, acting as a signal to those who are watching. As focus shifts to what is happening in the skies, the next inquiry delves deeper into the city where entry to the holiest sites is starting to shift. Access to these locations may not go as planned during one of the most significant times of the year, as recent developments suggest that the Church of the Holy Sepulchre and the Al-Aqsa Mosque are facing restrictions that impact how people congregate. These shifts are often linked to security concerns and the need for stability, but the timing is what makes it feel different. This is a moment strongly connected to presence and memory, and when that physical connection is limited, it changes the very nature of the experience. Ancient teachings often speak of a transformation where connection to the higher truth is no longer tied only to a specific physical coordinate, but becomes something that exists within the spirit of the individual. This does not remove the importance of these stones and walls, but it introduces the idea that a true connection cannot be blocked by a gate or a barrier. So when access becomes restricted, it raises a different kind of question about whether our convictions are defined by where we stand or by something that remains even when the path is closed. The atmosphere is thickening, and as the ground feels limited, the attention naturally shifts upward, where witnesses have reported seeing massive groups of dark birds fly across the sky. creating dense, shifting patterns that seem to swallow the light. It might not seem out of the ordinary at first since birds migrate and congregate, but it wasn't just their appearance that made an impression. It was their eerie, deliberate behavior. Others reported a brief period of total silence, a stillness so deep it felt heavy, followed by synchronized wing patterns that looked almost coordinated, as if the flock moved with a single mind. Science can explain the mechanics of murmuration, but the feeling on the ground was one of watching a coded message being written across the horizon. We are seeing a convergence of the physical and the atmospheric where the weather, the wildlife, and the political landscape are all vibrating at the same high frequency. When the hail hits the dust and the fog hides the ancient architecture, it forces a pause in the chaotic rush of modern life, making us realize that the world is much smaller and more connected than we think. People are looking at the horizon now, not just for the daily news, but for a sign of what comes next, sensing that the old rules of probability might no longer apply. The question isn't just about what is happening in Jerusalem, but why everything seems to be accelerating at once, and whether we are witnessing the beginning of a profound shift that has been whispered about for thousands of years. As the world watches these small fractures in the daily routine of the holy city, it becomes harder to look away and easier to wonder if the silence before the birds took flight was actually a final warning of a much louder change arriving on our doorstep. Every shadow cast on the ancient walls and every sudden storm serves as a reminder that history is not just something we read about. It is something we are living through right now, and the signs are becoming too bright to ignore. What if all of the current occurrences in Jerusalem are far more than a collection of isolated incidents? Because lately the city has felt like a grand stage for events that defy simple explanation, suggesting a deeper narrative unfolding beneath the surface. And there have been reports of debris falling dangerously close to hallowed ground, while the paths to the most sacred sites have become increasingly difficult to navigate as dark birds flood the sky in formations that look almost calculated, while the parched terrain is suddenly struck by heavy jagged hail that seems to fall out of nowhere, and the western wall is frequently shrouded in a thick unnatural fog that clings to the ancient stones. Even the ground itself has started to move as if the earth is restless and breathing with a heavy ancient rhythm. While bird migration routes, weather patterns, and environmental changes all converge to affect how these creatures travel and congregate under specific circumstances, these actions are known and understandable. On their own, however, it naturally causes people to view it differently, not as proof, but as something that sticks out when it occurs over a location that is already receiving international attention at a time when other strange happenings are being noticed. Ancient texts often describe how the earth and sky are impacted simultaneously, with natural factors contributing to a greater moment of awareness, rather than existing as separate indicators, but rather as a component of a distinct atmosphere that hangs over the human soul. Therefore, when the sky is filled with activity that appears to be coordinated and out of the ordinary, it prompts a different kind of contemplation, not about the birds themselves, but rather on why such moments are so captivating. And as the sky starts to change in ways that humans can perceive, the next shift occurs on the ground where water starts to move in ways that are just as surprising. There were reports of unexpectedly severe rain and hail in sections of Jerusalem, which affected normally dry areas. Water started to pool in the lower parts of the city where drainage is poor, flowing along winding alleyways and historic paths. Following the downpour, small ground movements and erosion were also observed in several areas. And while these occurrences can be explained on their own through changing weather patterns and saturated soil, the way the water flows is very noteworthy. Because when water starts to flow down the same routes that have been shaped by history in a city developed over centuries, it does more than simply follow the land. It reveals it, following the root structures and layers that are typically hidden beneath the surface. And it is what causes individuals to hesitate. It is not just the rain, But what it makes visible old wisdom describes rising rivers not simply as a force of nature, but also as something that carries a heavy presence and movement, showing the depth and power of what lies underneath the surface of our reality. Therefore, when water starts to flow through normally, still areas, a different kind of idea arises, one that is not about danger, but rather about what becomes apparent when everything else is disturbed. The following indicator is even more subtle as water starts to show what is beneath the surface, appearing through harder to explain light and sound rather than force. There have been reports of dim, strange light appearing on the water's surface near the Siloam pool, with subtle shifting reflections that resemble a soft light that quickly appears before fading rather than intense flashes or obvious sources. And while light has the ability to reflect and minerals have the ability to react, it is not simply the light that sets this apart. It is the moment, because other changes in weather and ground movement throughout the city are being observed in conjunction with these observations. And something that is subtle in that environment attracts more attention than it otherwise would. Additionally, there have been claims of faint vibrations or low-frequency sounds in the surrounding communities at night, which might be connected to natural ground activity or infrastructure. But when taken as a whole, they start to seem noticed rather than just demonstrated. There are many allusions in global folklore to natural signs that are not always obvious or striking, but are sufficient to cause people to pay attention and consider what they are witnessing, because the reaction the sign elicits is often more noteworthy than the sign's certainty. Therefore, when light appears in unexpected ways and sounds are heard without a distinct direction, the question becomes not only what they are, but also why such moments make people pause and take a closer look as the next alteration is more tangible, causing the ground itself to shift in ways that are more difficult to ignore. There have been reports of tiny sinkholes developing in some parts of Jerusalem, especially in places where the ground is limestone, which is known to gradually disintegrate during periods of intense precipitation. However, the frequency, rather than just the procedure, is what attracts attention, because individuals start to detect a trend when reports start to surface more frequently across several locations, exhibiting comparable symptoms of change. And that is where contemplation starts, because something subtle keeps happening, not because something huge has occurred. Universal philosophy describes how the land itself is impacted at key times, not as an isolated incident, but rather as a component of a greater change that encompasses both the visible and the invisible, suggesting that the ground is not always fixed, but can react and move in unexpected ways. Therefore, a distinct kind of question arises when the ground beneath a city starts to exhibit consistent changes regarding how frequently people ignore it until it becomes unavoidable, as the last piece of the picture comes from the larger tension that permeates the entire area. Geopolitical unrest in the areas surrounding Jerusalem continues to get international attention as analysts keep a tight eye on developments involving major global powers, noting changes in communication and positioning which are not new on their own. But the sheer number of simultaneous events is noteworthy, because there is a wider layer of pressure rising around the city, in addition to the environmental changes and odd observations. As internal and external variables start to coincide, individuals start to see the moment as a convergence, a place where several forms of tension, natural, social, and geopolitical, exist simultaneously rather than as a single event. Legendary teachers have described rumors of conflict and shifting borders as an atmosphere that people gradually start to perceive rather than as a singular occurrence, where the sense that something is developing is what sticks out more than the certainty of any particular outcome. Therefore, the question is not just about what is happening on the outside. When several levels of stress start to rise simultaneously, it becomes about how people identify times when everything seems more interconnected than usual, and when indicators, stress, and shifts all start to show up at the same time. And the last question now concerns what each component might represent when viewed as a whole. Each of these instances can still be explained when examined separately. Interception systems can be connected to a fragment. Security considerations may be linked to restricted access, and birds can follow natural patterns. But when all of these items show simultaneously in the same location under the same increasing sensation of attention, the meaning starts to change, because one event is no longer the focus. It has to do with convergence. Different layers are simultaneously changing in Jerusalem, where people are drawn to look up by the movement in the sky, while their feet start to feel unsteady on the ground, and patterns that are typically hidden are revealed by water. Every layer has its own narrative, but when they work together, they produce something different. A moment that people start to feel rather than just see. And that is what sets it apart. Ancient records describe signals that occur in several places: the sky, the earth, and among nations, overlapping in a way that is noticeable, where the specifics of each sign are not what make them stand out, but rather the pattern they create together to acknowledge that certain times are designed to be observed more intently than others, rather than to draw a hasty conclusion. Therefore, the question is no longer about a specific incident. It becomes this: are they isolated moments occurring simultaneously? Or are they a part of a bigger image that can only be seen in its entirety? We want to hear from you. Do you believe this is a series of incredible coincidences? Or do you feel a deeper connection between these events happening right now? The following question becomes personal if the meaning is found in how the signs work together rather than in a single symbol. Regarding what lessons people are supposed to learn from this, as the question inevitably becomes more intimate when everything is considered, including the happenings in the sky, the alterations on the ground, and the rising tension across the area. Because such times have always involved more than just the events themselves. They focused on awareness and the capacity to identify when something is changing. Awareness is the first lesson. And as significance is not always discovered in a single moment, it becomes crucial to pay attention and watch more closely when several changes start to occur simultaneously. Perspective is the second thing to remember, because as they start to overlap, they serve as a reminder that there isn't a single explanation for everything, which draws attention but doesn't provide absolute assurance. Reflection is the third lesson, because when something is familiar starts to feel uncertain, people start to focus on themselves and think more deeply about what really matters and what stays constant. Ancient proverbs tell us that when these things begin to take place, we should lift our heads with courage, because it is an awareness reaction, a change in posture where people are encouraged to look beyond what is happening and acknowledge that periods of change are also moments of attentiveness. We are reminded that we have not been given a spirit of fear, but of power and a sound mind. Therefore, the path is not confusion, but clarity and understanding, even when things seem strange or hard to relate to. So whether or not everything is fully known, the question is still open as it develops regarding whether these are just something to watch, or are they times that encourage deeper introspection. And after all that has been seen, where does hope stand when everything else starts to shift, as some seek explanations and some search for trends, while others start to question whether there is a deeper significance to these times? The great traditions of the past never intended for situations like this to make people fearful, but were meant to divert attention toward a deeper truth, because although the world is subject to change, certain foundations remain constant. And that is where optimism starts, just as the stories of old tell of the power to quiet the storm. When the wind and waves were powerful enough to cause people to lose control, the threat was real and terror took control. But the storm did not just gradually subside, it came to a halt. And that moment completely transforms our understanding of uncertainty. Although the storm was real, it lacked ultimate authority. Although the dread was genuine, it did not determine the result, and that still holds true today, as things could seem genuine and patterns can be challenging to comprehend. but they do not dictate the ultimate course because strength is an ever-present help in the midst of trouble, characterizing a presence that is present in the actual moment. And that is important because uncertainty is no longer the main focus of the narrative if assistance is available in the midst of doubt. If you found this perspective insightful, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into the events shaping our world, and don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments below because your voice is a vital part of this conversation. Although there is trouble, it is not the end, and the story continues through those who stay awake to the signs. What if all of these current occurrences are far more than a collection of isolated incidents? Because when several signs show up at once, that differentiation is crucial. Because without it, everything could seem overwhelming. However, it makes things simpler to comprehend when perspective shifts, not because the circumstances alter, but because our internal alignment changes. In situations like this, ancient wisdom provides a clear path by telling us not to be afraid because we are never truly alone. And we are encouraged not to be alarmed because we are connected to a higher power, which goes beyond simple comfort and acts as a form of training that demonstrates how to react by confronting the situation with awareness and trust, rather than by ignoring it. This theme carries on with the idea that in all things a greater purpose is working for the good of those who remain aligned with peace, which implies that even moments of uncertainty can have deep meaning, shifting the focus from the chaos of today to the potential of the future. There is a layer of stability to be found in the realization that the core of our spiritual reality remains the same yesterday, today, and forevermore. And while circumstances and events shift like the wind, this eternal stability can be found beyond the physical globe rather than within it. Therefore, people do not have to react with terror when they start to see patterns in nature, society, or the events going on around them. Because uncertain moments are frequently times to pay attention, not because everything is being explained, but because something significant is being observed. This raises a more intimate query regarding not just what is happening in the world, but what is happening within the person watching it. Because when things seem unsteady, our attention can either be directed toward dread or toward that which never changes. The systems have always shifted and storms have always existed, but what counts is how people react when they show up, and whether they choose to pay attention to what moves or what stays the same. Hope has never been determined by circumstances or environmental stability, but has always relied on something more profound and unchangeable, which protects our hearts and minds with a peace that surpasses all human comprehension. It is not necessary to explain every scientific detail to achieve this kind of calm, because it persists even in the face of unanswered questions, since it is predicated on what stays constant throughout. Therefore, people do not need to be confused when they observe the stress and shifts, because it might simply be a necessary halt or a shift in attention, meant to make hope materialize as something we can finally cling to. As these situations keep happening, the question grows more intimate regarding where your attention goes, because even when everything seems to be different, there is a chance to refocus rather than necessarily grasp everything at once. The clarity does not always stem from knowing all the answers, but from knowing where to stand when the answers are still hidden, and by trusting with all of our heart, rather than leaning only on our own limited understanding, we find guidance within the ambiguity. This implies that there is still a path forward even when events seem complicated, And it all depends on a trust that alters how everything is seen as individuals start responding with intention, rather than just reacting to every change. So when the world feels like it is changing, the question is, what are you choosing to hold on to in the middle of it all, especially when faced with widespread fear, such as the recent uncontrollable infernos that have consumed thousands of acres and obscured the iconic skyline of Jerusalem under an ominous gray shroud. The flames, first detected near the ancient forest, spread in multiple directions, at once threatening historic communities and forcing the evacuation of over 10,000 residents as police went door to door, and infrastructure was severely affected. The primary highways were shut down as flames moved perilously close to the roads, and smoke limited vision to almost nothing, causing drivers to abandon their cars and flee on foot, while hundreds of firefighting teams and aircraft worked around the clock under brutal conditions. Emergency responders battled extreme heat and exhaustion, while the fire devastated farms, vineyards, and wildlife habitats, reducing olive groves to cinders and sending animals running through burning land as birds filled the smoke-darkened skies. With irrigation systems in ruins and personnel from many countries joining the defense, the origin of the fire became a subject of increasing conjecture, with some pointing to natural causes and others suggesting deliberate intent. To make matters worse, national festivities were canceled because the fires coincided with significant days of remembrance. And while the world may write it off as a tragic wildfire, those of spiritual insight know that fire is rarely just a natural phenomenon. In the records of ancient wisdom, fire often signals the arrival of something monumental, serving as a messenger and a representation of a higher power and presence throughout human history. The fire often exists just before a great revelation, such as the famous accounts of flames that burn without consuming, or mountains that tremble and smoke as a new covenant is revealed. These flames have historically been used to proclaim sovereignty and mark the birth of new eras of spirit dwelling among people. And so we must ask if the current events in Jerusalem serve as a warning of a similar nature. While many see a disaster, those of faith see a signal, because in the grander narrative, fire is never accidental, but functions as a means of revelation and transformation. As the flames consume the hills, we are left to ask what is being shown to us and what is being purified, because when a city that is the center of an eternal purpose trembles, we must pause and pay attention. Jerusalem is more than just a city on a map. It is a spiritual hub entwined with ancient prophecy and destined to influence both the past and the future. The flames, getting dangerously close to the heart of the city, upsetting daily life and stopping worship, have a deeper meaning for those who study the signs, because this location has been the center of divine activity for millennia. Today, as smoke once again clouds the skies, the city trembles under the weight of ancient warnings that describe it as an immovable rock for all nations. Though the wildfire is a physical event, the message is spiritual, and many believe this could be the prelude to a new season or a final signal as disasters, wars, and signs from above begin to manifest, just as was cautioned long ago. This is why the current fires cannot be taken lightly, as they act as a wake-up call, reminding us that this region is still essential to an unwavering purpose. Jerusalem has once again captured global attention, with extraordinary events such as videos surfaced online showing what many believe to be heavenly sounds and images appearing in the clouds, while a massive swarm of locusts has descended like a living cloud. Dormant for 2 decades, these insects have returned with a force not seen in living memory, echoing ancient plagues and reigniting conversations about divine signs. These dramatic events stir speculation of a greater spiritual shift and serve as a reminder to stay vigilant and prepared as prophetic warnings of earthquakes and chaos point to how fragile life on Earth can be. The desert has become the epicenter of this phenomenon, where insects thrive under a specific mix of post-drought rains and sudden warmth, while at the same time, vital ancient rivers are drying up, threatening regional stability and economies. These developments feel like a living echo of ancient prophecies regarding wars and hardships preceding a great return, and the land itself feels like a vast living archive of sacred history, where stones and structures speak of divine encounters. Recent strange events like lightning striking prominent domes during a rainstorm and earthquakes dislodging pieces of ancient structures have further stirred the sense of mystery and speculation. We want to know what you think about these converging signs, and if you feel that we are standing on the edge of a significant transformation, so please like this video and subscribe to join our community of watchers as we continue to track these unfolding events. And be sure to leave your thoughts in the comments below, because we are living in a time that demands our full attention and a courageous heart. Are they indications of a long-awaited return of a divine presence, as many in Jerusalem wonder? Because ancient wisdom describes great tremors and shifts in the earth as the true harbingers of a concluding era that has been whispered about for millennia. When creation itself seems to shift beneath our feet as disasters increase across the globe, believers and skeptics alike are left to ponder whether these are warnings of something even greater to come. And at this very moment, something extraordinary is unfolding in Jerusalem that few people ever imagined they would see in their lifetime. In the heart of the old city, under the golden and heavy glow of the setting sun, the winding stone streets pulse with an energy that feels almost alive, while the ancient walls, polished smooth by centuries of faithful hands and millions of pilgrim footsteps, seem to vibrate with a deeper purpose as they hold not just history, but the collective weight of a global expectation that is reaching its boiling point. Thousands of pilgrims from every corner of the world have made their way here, some enduring lengthy and dangerous trips, and others having waited a lifetime for this singular sacred moment that defies all modern scientific explanation, where an unexplainable flame has appeared inside a sealed chamber since at least the 9th century. This phenomenon creates a bridge between the physical world and a realm we are only beginning to comprehend, suggesting that the laws of nature as we know them are subject to a much higher authority. This miracle of the holy fire occurs without the use of torches, lighters, or any human intervention, as a blue-white light descends from the atmosphere to ignite candles in a tense and total darkness. And the wonder does not stop there, because the flame itself is unique, as it does not burn skin, hair, or clothing for the first several minutes of its existence, allowing witnesses to pass their hands and even their faces through the heat without a single mark of harm. Scientists and skeptics have long studied this phenomenon with rigorous intensity, observing a flame that is mysteriously cool and dances unpredictably across the skin like a living entity. Yet despite every attempt to explain it through chemistry or trickery, no one has solved its mystery or proven any form of hidden device in over 1,200 years of recorded history. Eyewitnesses over the decades have reported even more startling phenomena like bluish beams of energy shooting upward from the sacred structure, and a heavy invisible force pressing down on the crowd, creating an electric atmosphere where the darkness gives way to a radiant and heavenly light in an instant that leaves thousands in tears. It is as if the air itself becomes saturated with an ancient power that demands silence and awe from every soul present. As devastating wildfires recently tore through the hills surrounding the city, consuming ancient forests and forcing thousands to flee their homes, an even more unsettling sound began to echo through the thick smoke-choked sky. Mysterious and deep trumpet-like blasts that were clearly neither the howl of the wind nor the roar of the encroaching flames. These sounds are never arbitrary in the records of the past, because the sound of a horn or a trumpet has always indicated that a new spiritual era is beginning, or that a cosmic warning is being announced to a world that has largely forgotten how to listen to the whispers of the divine. These acoustic anomalies seem to vibrate at a frequency that bypasses the ears and speaks directly to the core of human intuition, signaling a shift that no radar or satellite can track. If heaven itself is screaming out during a catastrophe of this scale, this transcends mere climate change or seasonal wildfires and points toward an eternal significance in a city that has always been defined by ancient covenants and sacred promises. There is a requirement in the old laws for a rare symbol of purity to be brought forth, a lasting ordinance involving a red heifer that marks the readiness for a new sacred temple to rise once again on the very spot where the golden dome currently stands resplendent against the horizon. This convergence of ancient biological requirements and modern logistical precision suggests that we are moving toward a focal point in history where the physical structures will once again align with spiritual mandates. The Jewish people have long yearned to resume their ancient services after 19 centuries of painful exile, and many see the rebirth of the nation in 1948 and the return of the people as a direct fulfillment of a prophetic roadmap that is now accelerating toward its final conclusion with unstoppable momentum. There is a massive movement to reconstruct the sacred center of worship, and even though physical and political barriers remain, the first flickers of a long-promised fire are stirring as priests undergo rigorous training, and the ancient council of the Sanhedrin rises once more to claim its place in history. The restoration of these ancient offices is not merely a cultural revival, but a calculated preparation for a global event that will require a centralized location of spiritual governance. The time itself seems to be accelerating with every fresh archaeological finding, such as the recent discovery of a sealed chamber near the Western Wall, containing a gold-plated bronze chest and artifacts linked directly to the very man who once sat in judgment over the Son of the Divine. This discovery revealed a physical echo of ancient remorse, a stone tablet with a Latin confession of innocence, and a piece of burnt linen drenched in funeral incense, serving as a haunting warning that no one can truly wash away the weight of truth or the consequences of their choices. Beneath the sacred city lies this physical reminder that every kingdom built on human pride and political power will eventually face a final judgment. And the very soil that once supported a cross today produces reminders of the eternal choice between fear and faith that every soul must eventually make. The fact that these relics were hidden for 2 millennia only to emerge now suggests a divine timing intended to challenge the secular narratives of our modern age. East of the city, the Mount of Olives stands as a silent sentinel soaked in memory, where history and redemption meet beneath the same sky. And while it was once only a distant prophecy that the mountain would split in two, a recent geological survey has revealed a massive and growing east-west crack, running directly along a fault line that scientists say could divide the hill at any moment. The geologists are baffled by the precision of this fracture, which follows the exact coordinates laid out in texts that are thousands of years old, proving that what we call tectonic movement might actually be a scripted response of the Earth to a cosmic command. The photographs show deep and jagged fissures cutting through ancient paths and tombs, and to those who watch the signs with spiritual eyes, this is creation itself echoing the promises of a divine return where the ground will part and the world will finally know a higher reign that is not of this earth. This mountain is where the most profound teachings of the future were first given, and where a return is expected to happen in the exact same way a departure once occurred thousands of years ago in front of stunned witnesses. On the other side of this mountain sits the Golden Gate, which has remained closed and sealed for centuries, waiting for a messianic entry that will change the course of human history forever, creating a divine alignment where heaven and earth seem to be holding their collective breath. The atmosphere in the valley below is thick with a sense of static electricity, as if the boundary between our world and the next is thinning to the point of transparency. The cracks in the earth are not a mere geological curiosity for researchers to study, but are a message carved into the very crust of the planet, whispering that the divine plan cannot be delayed or stopped by any human force as the Mount of Olives ceases to be a silent witness and becomes a living signpost for the end of the age. Recently, at the break of dawn, a pillar of pure and blinding white light appeared above the Temple Mount, shooting straight down from the sky and glowing steadily for 7 minutes without any possible atmospheric or technological explanation from the experts on the ground. The intensity of this light was reported to be greater than the morning sun, casting shadows that appeared to be etched into the stone walls themselves. The Israel Meteorological Service officially confirmed there were no lightning strikes or ionization recorded in the area, leaving scientists to call it a light anomaly, while the faithful recognized it as the return of a visible divine glory to the mountain, where the presence of the Creator once dwelled in the Holy of Holies. In that singular moment, the noise of traffic and the chaos of the modern world faded into a profound and heavy stillness, as if the entire city were finally listening to a heavenly language that had been silent for too long. A faint luminescent residue was left on the upper stones of the wall, a soft sheen like an oily dew that showed no known chemical cause when tested, serving as a physical fingerprint of a light that originated from beyond our dimension. This residue continued to glow faintly for hours, defying the laws of thermal radiation and challenging every chemist who attempted to categorize its composition. So we want to know if you feel the weight of these converging events, and if you truly believe we are standing on the very edge of a significant global transformation that will redefine everything we know about reality. Does the splitting of the sacred mountain and the appearance of the unexplainable light change how you view your own life and the times we are living in? Or do you see it as just a series of natural wonders that will eventually be explained away by science? Your voice is essential in this era of confusion, so please share your deepest thoughts and your own experiences in the comments below, because we are building a collective record of these extraordinary signs. If you found this deep exploration of the signs in Jerusalem to be powerful and moving, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel right now to stay updated as we continue to monitor these unfolding mysteries with intense focus. Every like and share helps bypass the algorithms that seek to suppress these important discussions, allowing this message to reach those who are searching for the truth. By joining our community of watchers, you ensure that you are always the first to hear about the next major shift in this unfolding narrative that is gripping the entire world. The earth is groaning in anticipation. The skies are speaking in a language of light, and the history of the future is being written in real time right before our eyes for all to see. This is not a rehearsal, but the opening act of a drama that involves every person on this planet, regardless of their background or belief. It is a time that demands our full attention, a time to cast away distractions and look at the horizon with a courageous heart and a spirit that refuses to be governed by fear. We must remember that even when the ground is shaking and the world seems to be falling apart, there is a foundation that is immovable and a truth that is eternal. The shaking is not meant to destroy us, but to wake us up from the slumber of materialism and reconnect us with the spiritual reality that has been ignored for too long. This is the moment to prepare and to recognize that the signs are no longer subtle whispers, but are now loud and clear proclamations of a change that is arriving on our doorstep. Stay vigilant, keep your heart anchored in the truth, and never stop looking up, because the moment you have been waiting for is not just drawing near. It is already here, and it is calling your name. As the ancient stones of Jerusalem continue to reveal secrets hidden for thousands of years, the world must decide if it will listen to the stones or remain blind to the obvious. Every discovery, every tectonic shift, and every pillar of light is a verse in a story that is reaching its climax. Thank you for standing with us on this watchtower as we interpret the signs of the times and prepare for the magnificent transition that lies just ahead. The horizon is changing every single day, and with it, our understanding of what is truly possible. So stay tuned for our next update as we dive even deeper into the mysteries of the Holy City and the global signals that are pointing toward an unavoidable and magnificent change that will soon be clear to every soul on this planet. We are here to witness and record these moments so that the truth remains preserved even as the world around us shifts into a new and unknown state. Keep watching and keep believing that the darkness is only a prelude to a light that will never fade. The world is changing, but the core truth remains. And as long as we stay connected to that truth, we will never lose our way, no matter how thick the fog of uncertainty becomes or how loud the storm of conflict grows. This is the era of clarity for those who seek it, and we are honored to be your guide through the unfolding mysteries of our time. Stay strong, stay focused, and stay connected as we move into the next phase of this global transformation, where the invisible finally becomes visible, and the unknown becomes known to all who have the eyes to see and the heart to understand. The legacy we leave behind in these moments will be measured by our courage to face the truth and our willingness to share it with the world. Join us as we witness the dawn of a new reality where the ancient promises are fulfilled and the hope of the ages is finally realized in a world that is being made new. The time for watching is now, and the destination is closer than you think. There is still the same light that formerly pervaded the great ancient temple of the Golden Era, and all it has done is wait for the perfect cosmic alignment to reveal itself once more. When the time finally came, it descended to remind rather than to devour, as the ancient promise says that the glory of the latter house shall be greater than the former. And today it feels closer than ever to that manifestation. Earth and heaven appeared to be connected by a solid pillar of white light, which acted as a tacit affirmation that the ultimate promise remains intact across the centuries. If only briefly, the ancient dwelling splendor had returned to the city of its choice, as poets and prophets have discussed this light for generations. So rise and shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the eternal rises upon you, were words that now appeared to be a physical manifestation rather than a mere poetic metaphor. Some people wrote it off as a simple atmospheric coincidence, while others referred to it as divine timing, but there was no doubt for those who stood in that glowing brilliance. They were aware that they were standing in a sacred place, as they felt a strange warmth without heat, and saw a brilliance that did not cause blindness. One observer remarked quietly that it was as if heaven blinked just long enough for us to remember who is still watching from the beyond. This celestial beam seemed to pierce the veil between dimensions, proving that the spiritual geography of Jerusalem is far more complex than any map can show. Heaven sent a pillar of light to a world that was busy erecting stone altars, but it was an invitation rather than a sign of completion. Because the brightness has not vanished, it only waits for the right moment to fill the world again. Stay put, because the next event rocked heaven and earth alike, as the earth has started to show what it has concealed for almost 3,000 years beneath the hallowed ground of Jerusalem, where innumerable generations have walked and worshipped. Archaeologists found a pattern deep beneath the Temple Mount during a recent inspection, utilizing AI-powered ground-penetrating radar, and the design was far too exact to be a natural formation. The signal revealed massive stone hallways, arched chambers, and a sealed space in the very middle that had remained undisturbed for millennia. The team fell silent as tiny cameras were lowered through a small opening to view the images on the screen, revealing rows of oil lamps, their earthenware browned by time, but immaculately preserved inside the chamber. The air in the room seemed to hold a static charge, as if the prayers offered there thousands of years ago were still vibrating within the limestone walls. Bowls of ash, which were the remains of old sacrifices long forgotten by humans, but not by the record of heaven, were placed next to them, and the word for the divine presence was etched on the distant wall in a faint but clear ancient script. Some initially thought the inscription was added later, but carbon dating of the ash and shards revealed an age from the 10th century before the Common Era, during the reign of the first great king, when the temple was at its most magnificent. This discovery suggests that the very blueprint of the divine dwelling was physically etched into the bedrock of the city, ensuring it could never truly be erased by war or time. The chamber was precisely aligned with the coordinates found in ancient writings that describe the most hallowed area, where the sacred chest of the covenant formerly sat, thanks to further 3D imaging. And scholars from all over the world flocked to Jerusalem when word reached the authorities, and it was dubbed the most significant archaeological find since the discovery of the Desert Scrolls. "We are standing above the place where heaven once touched earth," said another in a whisper, as the striking similarities with ancient texts became undeniable. The glowing presence that once took root inside those walls has been found again carved into the stone beneath the mount, and the room itself seems to have been unchanged for generations. There were even indications of incense compounds used in ancient worship still lingering in the air like a mixture of balsam cinnamon and frankincense. The scent was so potent that some researchers reported feeling a sense of overwhelming peace and clarity upon entering the vicinity. There was hardened olive oil residue in some of the lamps, indicating that they had burned right up until the moment of the temple's collapse, as if the priests, sensing the end, hurriedly shut the location and abandoned their last act of prayer. This provides scientists with an amazing view into the prehistoric past, but for those with eyes of faith, it is evidence that the divine has never left Jerusalem, and that although being invisible, the presence has been concealed among its ashes and stones, waiting to be revealed at the right moment. The resurrection of the ancient council, the arrival of the red heifers, the crack on the Mount of Olives, and the pillar of light are all recent discoveries that seem to point back to the center of the Temple Mount, where creation and covenant first met. The city is no longer just a museum of the past, it is a living organism reacting to a cosmic countdown where every stone is a witness to an unfolding destiny. One layer at a time, the earth is bearing witness, as though the stones themselves are fulfilling their promise that the set time for favor has finally come. Is this the moment because every artifact that is extracted from the dust appears to murmur that a great arrival is imminent? The once veiled majesty is stirring once more, and theologians note the symbolism of ashes for atonement, oil lamps for light, and an inscription for a commitment. One truth is indicated by three signs, which are light, sacrifice, and presence, proving that the tale of global salvation is not yet complete. Skeptics questioned whether anything holy remained beneath the mount for centuries, but thanks to modern technology, light can now penetrate areas that were previously inaccessible to humans. When that light came in, it saw evidence of an unbroken promise and a glory that was hidden rather than lost. We are witnessing the literal unearthing of a spiritual inheritance that was meant to be found precisely in this generation of chaos and searching. The stones have started to speak, and their words are straightforward: that the glory has not vanished, but has been concealed, awaiting the time when it will once more fill its home. Now the heavens are joining their chorus, so pay attention, because although the skies over Jerusalem have always been mysterious in recent months, they have taken on a vividness that is impossible to ignore. The two blood moons first appeared in the same year, both of which could be seen directly over the Temple Hill, casting an unsettling red glow over the Golden Dome. The lunar surface appeared almost liquid, as if the blood of history were being reflected back to the earth as a final warning. Astronomers called it a unique alignment, but the devout cited ancient warnings that the moon would turn to blood before the arrival of a great and terrible day. However, that was just the start, as a trumpet-like sound echoed across the skies as dawn broke over the valley, and it was neither the echo of the wind nor any man-made horn. Under a muted sky, the city stood motionless, and then the earth suddenly stirred with a severe shock that was felt as far as Syria, Lebanon, and Cyprus. This seismic event was not a local discharge of stress, but a regional awakening that seemed to ignore geological boundaries, as if the earth were standing up to greet a visitor. The movement was abrupt with no aftershocks, as if the earth spoke one powerful word and then became silent. That quiet was important as people braced for a second impact that never came, leaving them in a state of suspended anticipation. The ground remained unwavering, providing neither assurance nor an explanation, while the lack of aftershocks made the psychological effect even heavier. It was as if a giant hand had briefly shaken the foundations of our reality just to see who was still awake and who was still sleeping. For many, it was hard to ignore the timing, because the sky had changed, the air had become thicker, and the foundations of Jerusalem had shifted in a multi-layered and cohesive way. As assessment started, focus moved to the pattern of damage, which was highly selective and focused on the oldest neighborhoods. Ancient walls were riddled with cracks, while modern buildings made of reinforced concrete survived without a single fracture. This discrepancy defies the standard laws of physics, suggesting that the old world is being prepared for a transition that the new world cannot yet understand. Engineers cited soil composition, but locals walking the streets saw that the harm followed a specific line where one house broke and the other remained intact. The planet appeared to be able to discriminate between different eras, reacting differently to the old and the new as contemporary versions stood motionless, while ancient locations connected to memory and worship showed signs of activity. This indicates that the coming shift will prioritize the sacred over the secular and the eternal over the temporary. Scripture has traditionally utilized the metaphor of shaking to show that foundations are being put to the test, rather than eliminated, and Jerusalem's layers were exposed rather than destroyed. What had persisted for ages shifted, while what had just been constructed held constant, but soon issues emerged that no structural report could address. The voice of the ground had been inconsistent, and the source of the next development was the Kidron Valley, which is a location traditionally connected to burial and recollection. A little cave opening developed along a rocky slope after the ground shifted, revealed by a gentle movement that loosened what had been sealed for generations. Inside the cave, the atmosphere was frozen in time, carrying a weight that felt like a physical pressure on the chest of anyone who dared to enter. A human body in a closely contracted position rested against the cave wall in a posture that conveyed serenity, rather than chaos, with arms held close and torso folded inward. The chains that bound the body were discolored with age, and mineral deposits had embedded into the threads securing the shape. It gave the impression of something finished and maintained rather than violence in motion. The discovery of this figure represents a bridge to a forgotten chapter of human history, where the physical body was used as a vessel for a spiritual message that is only now being decoded. We want to know what you think about these incredible signs appearing from the depths of the earth and the heights of the sky. So do you believe these are separate coincidences or part of a singular divine plan? Your insights are valuable as we piece together this cosmic puzzle, so please leave a comment below.